Hello, friends. Welcome to Elle Loves Miracles, where we're talking about stories of survival, resilience, perseverance, and sometimes it's a miracle this dude didn't die. Sometimes it begs the question, what were they thinking? Let's get into it. We're talking about a guy who took dream big to a whole new altitude. This story is about Larry Walters, famously known as Lawnchair Larry. He was born on April 19th of 1949 in Los Angeles, California. In the summer of 1982, a seemingly ordinary man from California captured the world's imagination with an extraordinary daredevil act. Larry Walters was a truck driver with a lifelong dream of flying. His story is one of ambition, ingenuity, and the pursuit of a childhood dream, tempered by legal repercussions and personal tragedy. This detailed account explores Walter's life, his audacious flight, its aftermath, and the enduring legacy of his adventure. It's a miracle he didn't die. He grew up in Los Angeles in the 1950s. Larry was immersed in a post-war era buzzing with optimism, technological ambition, and fascination with aviation. The city was a hub for aerospace innovation, with nearby airports and military bases fueling a cultural obsession with flight. As a young boy, Larry was captivated by this atmosphere. Little Larry spent his childhood fantasizing about planes, a passion that became a defining thread in his life. His dream was to become a pilot, specifically in the United States Air Force, a goal that reflected the era's heroic view of aviators. However, his poor eyesight, a condition likely present from a young age, dashed these hopes early on, setting the stage for his later unconventional approach to flight. Larry's fixation on flying took a pivotal turn at the age of 13. It was 1962. While visiting an Army-Navy surplus store, he encountered weather balloons hanging from the ceiling. This moment was a revelation. The sight of these large helium-filled balloons sparked an idea. If enough balloons could lift heavy equipment, why not a person? This wasn't a fleeting childhood whim. It was a concept he nurtured for 20 years. Showing a persistent, almost obsessive curiosity. As a teenager, he experimented with hydrogen gas, building homemade generators to inflate small balloons. He would send them in the sky with notes attached. None ever returned. These early experiments suggest a hands-on, trial-and-error approach. He was blending creativity with a touch of recklessness. Larry attended Hollywood High School, where his interest in science was obvious when he created a project called Hydrogen and Balloons. The project earned him a D. Possibly due to its unconventional nature or the lack of academic rigor, this setback didn't deter him. He was undaunted by this failure. Friends and later accountants described him as a good-natured guy with big dreams, and someone with a spark to see beyond the ordinary. Larry served as an Army cook in Vietnam. He was brought back from the Vietnam War twice by the Red Cross to see his dying father, and he was 24 at the time that his father died in 1973. This suggests he was in Vietnam around 1970 to 1973. He still had that pilot dream, but his crappy eyesight meant that the Air Force wouldn't touch him. He served as a cook, not a flyboy, so Vietnam came and went. Let's fast forward to the late 1970s. Larry was in his early 30s. He was driving trucks for a living and stuck in a routine that's about as exciting as stale toast. Larry felt like life was passing him by, but that childhood spark, it was still burning. He started sketching plans and crunching numbers on helium and lift. By early 1982, Larry was ready to stop dreaming and start doing. He was 33 years old, living with his girlfriend, Carol Van Dusen. He meticulously planned his flight. gathering materials with the help of his friends and his girlfriend. Using a forged requisition from Filmfare Studios, he acquired 45 8-foot weather balloons and several helium tanks. These weren't your kid's birthday party balloons. These were industrial designed to haul equipment into the stratosphere. Each balloon, when filled, could lift approximately 12 pounds, providing the necessary lift for his craft. 40 to 45 balloons could lift his 200-pound self, plus a chair and some gear. Carol, his girlfriend, she was the kind of partner who'd roll her eyes but still hand him a wrench for his harebrained scheme, while Larry was prepping for a PhD in backyard aeronautics. For the throne of this harebrained operation was a Sears aluminum lawn chair. It was $100. Comfy enough for a barbecue, sturdy enough for, well, we'll see. He named it Inspiration 1. The chair, with its waffle iron webbing seat and tubular aluminum armrests, was both practical and symbolic. It was a humble throne for an extraordinary journey. To ensure safety and control, Larry equipped himself with a parachute that cost $900. He had purchased it for a single jump from a flight school in California. His gear included a pellet gun to shoot balloons for descent, a CB radio for communications, an altimeter, hand compass, and flashlight with extra batteries, a medical kit and a pocket knife, 8 plastic bottles of water, a package of beef jerky, sandwiches, and a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola, a camera to document the flight, a pack of beer, perhaps for celebration. Larry didn't do all this alone. He roped in Carol and a crew of about 10 friends. It was your classic hold my beer squad. They're such loyal friends. They're just all in on this. This is crazy. So they spent weeks planning in Larry's backyard, turning it into a DIY launch pad. Picture extension cords and helium tanks hissing, balloons bobbing like overeager party guests, someone definitely cracking a beer while debating how many sandwiches Larry needs for the ride. Now, Carol could have shut this down. Most partners would have said, "Hey babe, you're not NASA." But she saw how much it meant to him. As for his friends, they're not reckless enablers. They're the kind of ride or die crew who would help you build a soapbox racer. That's love, not lunacy. So the launch pad was planned for July 2nd of 1982 from the backyard of his girlfriend's home at 1633 West 7th Street, San Pedro, California. Walters intended to drift northeast over the San Gabriel Mountains to the Mojave Desert, a journey he hoped would be both safe and scenic. So they tether the chair to Larry's truck to keep it grounded while inflating balloons. Each one's filled with helium, tied off and secured to the chair with ropes and water jugs. One of his friends purchased a life jacket from a marine supply store in case the wind shifted over the ocean. His plan was simple. He was going to float up 100 to 200 feet, pop a few balloons, and drift back down over a couple hours. His crew was hyped up, passing around beers, making bets on how high he'd go. It was a backyard circus. No one thought Larry would travel 16,000 feet. They were picturing a chill float, maybe high enough to wave at the neighbors. Larry was running through his checklist: gun, radio, parachute, snacks. He was ready. On the morning of July 2nd, 1982, this is Larry's moment of truth. He spent years feeling grounded by his job, his eyesight, his ordinary life. Now he's literally about to rise above it all. Larry climbed into the lawn chair, tilted back about 10 degrees, and prepared for liftoff. The plan was to hover briefly to test the setup, but the balloons had other ideas. Rising at 800 feet per minute, Inspiration 1 snapped the tethering rope, sending Larry soaring far beyond his intended altitude. The chair pitched forward so violently that Larry's glasses flew off, along with some of the equipment hanging from the chair. The crew's jaws dropped. Within minutes, this crazy ass was at 16,000 feet, 3 miles high, where the air is thin and the commercial jets fly. Larry's in a lawn chair surrounded by balloons. San Pedro is shrinking to a speck below. He has no steering, no brakes, just a pellet gun and a dream. Delta and TWA pilots radioed reports of a man in a lawn chair cruising at high altitude with a pistol in his hand. Larry, aware of the danger, used his CB radio to alert air traffic control, identifying himself as the unexpected intruder. He's alone, soaring over Long Beach, probably wondering if he's a genius or if he's gonna die. The view was breathtaking, but the situation was dire. Larry heard the roar of the jet engines, but couldn't see the planes, and they couldn't see him due to clouds. Fearing an imbalance if he shot too many balloons, Larry hesitated, but eventually he popped several with his pellet gun. At around 15,000 feet, he accidentally dropped the gun, leaving him with limited control over his descent. Now he's at the mercy of the balloons, which are slowly losing helium on their own. The chair starts sinking, but not in a graceful glide, more like a drunk seagull wobbling toward Long Beach. The wind's pushing him, and he's drifting over power lines, houses, probably some very confused dog walkers. After about an hour total in the air, the balloons are deflating enough to bring him lower. But lower doesn't mean safe. He's headed straight for a residential neighborhood, and because the universe loves drama, his chair gets tangled in power lines at about 20 feet off the ground. Sparks fly, and a chunk of Long Beach loses power for 20 minutes. I told you it's a miracle he didn't die. Larry climbed down safely, and he was unscathed by his high-altitude adventure. He was a little shaky, but he was grinning because he did it. He flew 3 miles high in a lawn chair and lived to tell the tale. Larry landed roughly 10 miles from his launch site. The police arrested him on the spot. The FAA wasn't thrilled about rogue chairs in their airspace. The FAA charged him with violating several regulations. Initially, he was fined $4,000. Larry appealed it, and the fine was reduced to $1,500. Larry's flight made him an instant celebrity. 10 days later, he appeared on Late Night with David Letterman, where he shared his story with humor and humility. He was featured in a Timex watch advertisement and briefly worked as a motivational speaker, inspiring others to pursue their dreams. However, the fame was fleeting. Larry quit truck driving and struggled to find steady work, taking sporadic jobs as a security guard. The lawn chair Inspiration 1 was initially given to a neighborhood boy named Jerry. Years later, Larry regretted this decision when the Smithsonian expressed interest. The chair was eventually recovered and exhibited at the San Diego Air and Space Museum in 2014. It now resides in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. In the years following his flight, Larry led a quieter life. He hiked in the San Gabriel Mountains and volunteered as a forest ranger for the United States Forest Service. However, personal challenges mounted. He broke up with his girlfriend of 15 years, and his financial instability persisted. On October 6th of 1993, at the age of 44, Larry hiked to a remote spot in Angeles National Forest, and he died by self-harm. Larry's death cast a somber shadow over his legacy, but his flight remained a powerful symbol of human aspiration. Here's what Larry said when he was reflecting on his adventure. "Since I was 13 years old, I've dreamed of going up into the clear blue sky in a weather balloon. By the grace of God, I fulfilled my dream, but I wouldn't do this again for anything." Larry Walters' 1982 flight fulfilled a 20-year dream, showcasing human ingenuity and the power of perseverance. Yet his legal troubles and personal struggles remind us of the complexities behind such bold acts. His legacy endures through cultural works and museum exhibits, inspiring those who dare to dream big while serving a cautionary tale about the risks of unchecked ambition. As Walters himself said, a man can't just sit around. And that's the tale of Lawnchair Larry. Proof that with enough ambition, duct tape, and a total disregard for the FAA regulations, you too can float your way into legend. But don't try this at home, okay? Like and subscribe if you enjoy stories that are 90% inspiration and 10% poor judgment. See you in the next one.